Hi guys, welcome back. Today on this very gloomy day, I want to walk you through the books that I read during the month of February. This reading month was a very mixed bag. In fact, I think I've never had such a big discrepancy in ratings that I give books to. It's ranging from a 5-star read down to a 1-star read. So let's get into it. The first book I finished in February was my 5-star read. And the rest of the books and how I enjoy them might have something to do with a kind of book hangover that I got from this particular book. And that is L'Assommoir by Émile Zola. I think this book has been translated in English, at least the title. It has been translated, but the title has been translated in various ways, and I think you can find it under the original French title. This is a book that deals with the working class in Paris at the turn of the 20th century, and we follow our main character, Gervaise, who is a young woman who came recently to Paris from the south of France to basically find her better life together with her boyfriend and her 3 kids. And the book opens an evening and she is in her room waiting for her husband to come home, and it's like in the middle of the night and she knows he's probably come home very drunk, and we follow her life from then on with all the ups and downs that she has to go through, from great successes to deepest distress. This book kind of broke my heart, and at the same time I fell in love with it. I mean, obviously it's not a happy book. It deals a lot with abuse and alcoholism, and also with the limitations of what a woman could do with her life around that time and in that sphere of the French society. I'm kind of a Zola fan. I've been since I read excerpts from his work for school. And he is part of the realistic and naturalistic movement of writing in the French 19th and 20th century literature. So he likes to write in a very raw language. Everything he talks about is heavily researched, and he really makes it a point in this book to show some things that just are not that pretty, but that's just how things were. And I really enjoy that. This book is actually part of pretty much a saga that he wrote, various different books following different characters belonging to 2 French families, the Rougon and the Macquart. And with this book and this whole series of books, actually, he really wanted to show the ills of his contemporary society. And he even writes in his introduction that he is going into all these gruesome details just because he wants to show how things are. And that's now up to the people who are actually in power to do something about it. This book really touched me, and I think it's gonna stay with me for a long time. I was really living through hell together with our main character, Gervaise, and it was just an amazing reading experience. And in this series of books, there are also more books about Gervais' kids, and one of them is quite well known. You might have heard of it. It's called Germinal, and it follows the miners in France in the 20th century. And another one follows Gervais' daughter, Anna, and the book is called Nana, and it's about high society prostitutes around that time. So this is sending me down a rabbit hole of wanting to know how the lives of Gervais' children will go on and what it will tell me about French society in the 19th and 20th century. So I just love this. And if this sounds remotely like something that would interest you, it's just incredible, and is also a perfect pick for the Classics Community Challenge. Next up, we have something that was somewhat disappointing, and that is this little play called An Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley. This was written in the 1940s, but it is set in 1912 at this house in which the Burling family lives. And they are sitting at dinner one evening, and a man comes to their house and says he is an inspector and he is coming in to interrogate them about the suicide of a young working class woman, and he tells them that he thinks they all have something to do with it. Sounds really intriguing, right? The thing is, this has nothing to do with a detective story at all, and it's actually a kind of criticism and kind of satiric fable at the same time that is showing social injustice and like the ills of post-industrialization capitalism in Britain. And while I thought, okay, you know, that might be cool, that might be interesting, that's an interesting twist on, you know, what I thought this would be, the exploration of these topics were very surface level and kind of on the nose, not very subtle. The plot itself relies on so many coincidences that it's just not believable. And at the same time, it felt very predictable. Like, I knew that these coincidences would come and that they're completely ridiculous. I have to admit the setting, the 1912 setting, was quite well done. And I still kind of wanted to finish the play to just see what happens in the end. But overall, it was kind of disappointing and just left me a bit cold. So that was very much a shame. Next, I needed something a bit light. So I picked up one of Agatha Christie's mystery thrillers from the 1920s. This is The Man in the Brown Suit, and it follows our young heroine called Anne Bedingfield. She is recently orphaned and she is pretty much bored with her life. She just keeps saying she wants adventure. And she witnesses this accident, or at least it looks like an accident, of this man getting electrocuted in a tube station in London. And as she wants to help him or kind of revive him, she notices that there's this man coming up to the victim, and he is pretending to help the victim out, but it rather looks like he's searching his pockets. And so she's sent down this rabbit hole of trying to find who this mysterious man in the brown suit is. And this gets her wrapped up in this whole crazy espionage story, coupled with like diamond thefts, that brings her with a ship to South Africa. This was kind of charming. The main character is very charming, and it was just like basically a crazy ride, which was fun. The book was also switching from first-person narration from the point of view of Anne and to diary entries of another character, and I thought that was kind of interesting and kept the narration fresh, and that's also not something I've seen in Agatha Christie before. On the other hand, there was this somewhat weird and uncomfortable power dynamic in the relationship between our main character Anne and her love interest in the book that was very strange and frankly really doesn't resonate well with readers from our century. What I also kind of found a bit disappointing was that I didn't have this sense of place in the sections that were actually taking place in South Africa. I didn't feel like we were there. I felt like it could have been anywhere else, which is not really a good sign. Like, there were no local colors. There was no character that was a local. So yeah, that was a bit disappointing. But overall, I kind of needed a fun ride, and I think Agatha Christie thrillers are always good for that. So yeah, it was just the perfect palate cleanser. And the roller coaster keeps going up and down because the next book I finished was Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I am a big fan of dystopian fiction, and I absolutely love The Handmaid's Tale, 1984, and I just haven't read Brave New World up until now. And this was definitely on my list, something that I needed to have done, and I needed to give it a shot. And actually, I needed to give it a shot one last time because I've already tried to read this book, never went further than the 10 first pages. I buddy read this with Sandra from the channel Pull Down the Mood, and thank God for Sandra, because I probably would not have finished this book if it wasn't for her. I was about 60% through and I seriously considered DNFing it. This is, as I said, very famous dystopian fiction written in 1930s, and it's set in this future where humans don't reproduce anymore like we do today. Humans are bred in test tubes and are conditioned to hold a certain position in society and do a certain task. So their existence and their place in society is already predestined. Our main character is called Bernard Marx, and he seems to be the only one who notices that things around him are not so great and that there's a lot of brainwashing going on. So he sets off to this trip to a reserve in New Mexico where a small portion of the world population are still living a life as we live it today, I guess, without all the technological and scientific and biological advancement of this new society. I don't think I've been very negative on this channel before, so I'm gonna keep it short. This book is just not for me. The writing is dull and convoluted and dry. The characters are frankly really forgettable. And to top it off, there's so many things that are happening that feel completely unbelievable and improbable to me in this future world. I'm not going to go too much into detail if you want to read it, but firstly, how the conditioning of humans is done scientifically, biologically, in the labs at the embryo stage is just, trust me, no. Like, never ever would it work. And secondly, I just thought it really unbelievable that our main character, Bernard, is the only one who seems to see through the problematic parts of how this society has evolved. I just couldn't really believe it. I kept thinking about Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, where there's a subset of people who are clandestinely doing things against the status quo and trying to resist, and I just couldn't believe that you wouldn't do that here. So while I still believe that at the time this book came out, the ideas it presented and the discussions that it can set off were probably groundbreaking, I just don't feel like it stands the test of time. And I don't know. It just wasn't for me, and I personally couldn't recommend it to you in good faith. But still, if this sounds like something you would be interested in as a concept, maybe give it a try. Maybe you can learn something from it. Yeah, pity, but not for me. And finally, I finished up on a little novella that I very much enjoyed, and that was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. And this is the first installment in a series of novellas called The Murderbot Diaries. So this is a sci-fi adventure, and we are following this droid who secretly calls itself Murderbot. And it's basically a very sarcastic, misanthropic droid that secretly hacked its governor module, so basically has free will, and it doesn't like to interact with humans very much and would probably prefer to watch entertainment videos the whole day. But still, the droid belongs to a corporation and it is sent to help out researchers on an uncharted planet and serve as a security droid. And very quickly things start to go wrong because a neighboring mission goes completely dark and cuts off all contact. I really enjoyed this novella. I think the pacing of it was really good. It wasn't too rushed, which is something that I did not enjoy very much with the Binti sci-fi books. Here it was very well paced and still very engaging. The very introverted murderbot was very relatable and I think just a well developing character, and I can't wait to see how it develops further in the other installments of the series. The end, however, was a little bit rushed and seemed to come out of nowhere a bit, but at the same time I kind of understand it because it opens up possibilities for the next installment, and it was just a really good fun ride, and I basically can't wait to get to the next book in the series. Alright guys, these were the books that I read in the month of February. As I said, a very mixed bag with a few jewels in there. So let me know what you've read in February and what you enjoyed in February. Did you read any of the books that I talked about? Do you want to talk about Brave New World? Because I didn't like it, but I still want to talk about it. And yeah, I hope you are reading great books, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!